What is up, Bears fans? Welcome to Chicago Bears Huddle podcast with me, your host, Owen James, the UK take on all things Chicago Bears. Guess, yes, we are talking Caleb Williams. We're going to talk about one of the primary topics of this off-season. Someone who is taking up a lot of column inches, someone who is taking up a lot of discussion minutes, and certainly I saw a very interesting discussion the other day on the comparisons to Jaden Daniels and Drake May that were made to Caleb Williams. We'll talk a little bit about that as well on this video. However, look, OTAs are done. The non-voluntary ones that seem to be over. Obviously, mandatory minicamp is done. OTAs are done. Everything obviously for this sort of program ahead of what is going to be a very dull and boring few weeks before training camp gets back underway. Look, the Bears have got together. The Bears have obviously gone through all that off-season program that they need to pre-training camp. Now, one of the constants throughout that entire time, apart from obviously the coaching staff, was Caleb Williams. Now, Caleb Williams is a second-year quarterback. Obviously, did not need to attend a lot of what he did. He didn't need to attend voluntary minicamp. He did not need to attend voluntary OTAs. He did not need to attend any of those, only mandatory minicamp. Realistically, he could have been quite happily be within his rights, within his contractual rights under the CBA to kind of sit there and go, yeah, I'm not coming. Gonna have an extra holiday. I got smacked around last year. I got treated like shit. I got left on my own. I'm not coming in. I'm having an extra holiday. And you know what? Some of us would have done that, wouldn't we? We'd all go, well, boss, you're treating us like dirt. We ain't coming in. But this is a very different coaching staff. This is a very different ethos within the Bears this season. And certainly it seems to be a very positive, progressive, intense, atmosphere within the franchise at the moment. There seems to be a very, forward-thinking, optimistic way of looking about the Bears, and it's so nice to have, rather than the doldrums and the constant depression and the defeats and the constantly feeling like you you can't go on. So Caleb obviously has attended everything. He has shown a real commitment, not only to be there to improve himself, but to learn the offense, to improve obviously the quality of what he does, to have more time working with the coaches, and display leadership, display a real drive to succeed. And hopefully that's something that will not only gain him some extra respect among some of the guys, particularly some of the veterans, but also kind of help him to really take that next step to, not go through any sophomore slump, to kind of hit that top notch, style that we know that this kid has got. This is a first round draft pick. This is a guy who is more than capable of being a top quarterback in the NFL. Now, Coach Ben Johnson spoke about this at his presser. This is what Ben had to say. So Ben said, this is talking about Caleb. He says he's committed to learning the offense. We're not where we need to be yet as a team. He understands that. Any chance he gets to get a few more full speed reps, sounds like he wants them. That was in response to him being asked about why Caleb obviously was turning up for absolutely everything. And it was interesting, wasn't it? Around rookie minicamp, that he was even in and around Hallas Hall. He seems to be constantly there. He seems to be always around, always wanting to be more, to learn more. It's dynamic. It's praiseworthy that the guy has got such amazing commitment. Now we look at this quote from Ben Johnson. He says he's committed to learn the offense. Now we know that the offense this season will be a whole lot more complicated, a whole lot more different levels than there ever was under probably the worst offensive coordinator in NFL history in Shane Waldron. Ben Johnson will bring a whole new level to it. He'll bring a dynamism. He'll bring trick plays. He'll bring, a fantastic scheme that will hopefully, replicate some of what he did in Detroit. Incidentally, Detroit's offense is really struggling apparently under new OC, whose name I can't remember. And I don't actually care what his name is. But apparently Detroit are not looking great. Yeah, told you my prediction. Detroit finished third in the division. It's going to come true. Anyway, he said, we're not where we need to be yet as a team. And look, that's understandable. That is understandable. And I think, look, you've got to I know you've got to temper. Look, I'm trying to be optimistic here. I'm trying to be forward thinking. I'm trying to be positive as possible about where we are as a team at this moment in time, about how things are looking at this moment in time. And I 100% get that we've got to be, take this with a little pinch of salt, because at the end of the day, this is football in shorts. It's not getting hit yet, As everyone says, everyone can talk the talk and walk the walk, and then they get hit in the face and shit gets real and, things change. But this is, positive that he knows that we're not there as a team, but we are making progress towards that. There is a clear target, obviously, a clear goal of where Ben Johnson wants them to be. And I'm sure that's something that he has kind of transmitted to Caleb as well. And Caleb seems to be completely buying in. And that's a massive part of it. When the quarterback buys in, when he shows full commitment to doing what he needs to do, which is learn the scheme and develop under this coach, then that's going to move the team forward. Now, Caleb obviously had a time where last season he didn't get the coaching that he needed. He didn't get the support that he needed. And certainly, he obviously talked in that book and that interview with Seth Wickersham about his admiration for Adam O'Connell. But look, we've now got in Chicago probably one of the best offensive minds in the NFL, one of the best young head coaches in the NFL, someone who can really help Caleb to develop. Not only has he got him, he's got Declan Doyle, one of the most exciting young offensive coordinators, Press Taylor, JT Bat. There's so much talent there in the coaching staff to help develop and bring this man on. And it's encouraging that he's there for everything. He's there to get more reps. He's there to look at things, to get better, to do things at speed. And that's some of the things that Ben Johnson wanted. Ben, it's been noticeable at times, has been getting on Caleb's back and shouting, quicker, faster, and trying to get him to move a little bit quicker, not only in reading out the play, but getting to the line of scrimmage, developing the play, changing play, etc., etc. Now, we've seen in all these activities, the OTAs, the mini camps, etc., Caleb do very well. Yes, there's been some bad moments, but there's been some good moments. And look, yes, we should not be getting carried away by football in shorts. But by that same token, if Caleb had been an unmitigated disaster throughout all this and just looked pretty awful, that would have caused probably more panic and more fear. And I think, probably would have kind of caused more discussion amongst the fan base and more of the Tyson Bagent should be number one, and Caleb Williams is shit, and all this that seems to be going around some so-called Bears fans. But look, it's encouraging, and this quote from Ben Johnson more than shows that. Going back to Caleb's season last season, I think at times, with those 68 sacks, for example, he tried to do too much. Yes, he did hold on to the ball a little bit too long at times, but some of that was down to the fact that he was, trying to give receivers time to get open, trying to give receivers the opportunity to get the play going. And, I think he tried too hard at times, and rather than take some of the simple options and rather than do the simple things, did some things that were perhaps too complicated to try and prove himself because he felt under pressure maybe. Maybe hadn't had the guidance. Let's face it, Coach Matt Eberflus was an absolute disaster. Going back to his stats from last season, his passing stats, 17 games played, 351 completions from 562 attempts, 62.5% completion percentage, which, on the whole, not too bad at all. 3,541 yards, again, not too bad at all. Average 6.3 yards per completion, 20 TDs, 6 interceptions, and that horrible number of 68 sacks. But like I said, a lot of that was not just down to him holding on to the ball too long. It was down to the fact that the offensive line were absolute garbage. The interceptions number is low, which is good. But obviously part of that is down to the fact that there was not always taking a risk at times, which I think is something that obviously that Ben Johnson will try and develop with Caleb. In terms of rushing, he had 81 carries for 489 yards, averaging 6 yards a carry and no touchdowns. But 6 fumbles is pretty depressing indeed. So that's not great, is it? That's something obviously that Caleb will look to do better this coming season, which is protect the ball a little bit better. But look, it's encouraging, isn't it, that there's been that real positive forward step, that real kind of optimism in what we're seeing, in what's developing, in how Caleb is conducting himself. He's showing that leadership. He's showing everything a quarterback needs to be. And like I said, if he'd come in and been a disaster, if he'd come in and not done so great, I guarantee you'd be hearing about it. And it'd be a lot more of a cacophony than it would be over him doing a good job. Yes, things will have to come together in training camp. Yes, the offense needs to click much more. But we've seen things that are encouraging. We've seen Caleb change his footwork. We've seen Caleb work well with Coach Johnson. We've seen Caleb start to hook up more with Roma Dunze. We've seen him try also get a much better work rate and also connection as well with DJ Moore. All very positive. Now, as I've said on a number of videos now, the Bears have done everything this off-season so far to get Caleb to the right place. New coaching staff, offensively minded, brand new offensive line with some top O linemen. Joe Tooney, a guy who's protected Tom Brady, a guy who's protected Patrick Mahomes, a guy who's won Super Bowl after Super Bowl. Drew Dahlman, probably the best center on the market. Jonah Jackson, former Pro Bowler. Darnell Wright, he's already here. Yes, there's a battle over that left tackle position, which Ozzy Trapillo looks like he may well win over Kieran Amagaji and Braxton Jones, who's obviously slated to go to training camp, having not done anything yet. So look, it's looking positive for Caleb. It really genuinely is. And it's nice to hear people talking nicely about him and saying good things about him rather than slaughtering him as some so-called Bears fans do seem to do. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments about what's been said by Coach Johnson and obviously about Caleb. Thank you for watching the Chicago Bears Huddle podcast. As always, guys, let's bear down. Catch you later, Chicago.